Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? Should America send its military abroad looking for monsters to slay and imposing democracy on people unprepared for it? Or should we let other countries decide for themselves what their governments will look like? Tonight, war, peace, and the struggle for freedom. Thomas Hobbes once said that the natural state of man was perpetual war. It's not hard to see why he would come to this conclusion, since the story of mankind is filled with evidence of organized violence and gross wickedness. But the premise that because human life in its original state was nasty, brutish, and short, the imposition of government was necessary to liberate people and to assure human progress is flawed. It doesn't make sense that a society could be organized simply because the strongest combatant in a war had accrued firepower necessary to exercise and enforce a self-proclaimed exclusive use of violence over a portion of that territory. That, of course, is the definition of government, the entity that monopolizes force. Society can and certainly has self-organized over the course of history, though the natural state of man is complete freedom, and though government is essentially the negation of freedom. Man is rational and social, and society emerged through the cooperation of free people, not through force. The idea that governments must exist to create the space for a vibrant society is ridiculous. Government has no resources of its own, only what it steals, and it can't build any institutions until there is a society over which to build them. Government makes laws and then monopolizes force so as to compel compliance with those laws. But is all this force always necessary? Free communities can negotiate rules on their own that operate under natural rights and the free market. During the gold rush in California in the 1850s, for example, where there was no formal government, communities of miners often created rules and regulations on their own, ones that worked so well that they spread all the way to the Great Plains. The federal government largely adopted them when it came in to claim the western frontier, when it was profitable to do so. But not before Congress tried to seize the land from the prospectors who opened it up in the first place. Because it is basically a parasite, government never enters an enterprise unless there is something valuable to appropriate from it. Government cannot even exist until society exists, and society can't exist until free people cooperate and come together freely. How do we achieve peace in such a world? Donald Rumsfeld was correct when he told me that there'll be no peace in the world until every man is free, because to every man he is the world. But where Secretary Rumsfeld and his fellow neoconservatives are wrong is in their assertions that the military can free other men, and that our government can free other people, even people it doesn't claim to represent. Precisely because every man is his own world. The only barrel of a gun that can free a man is his own barrel of his own gun. Each one of us across the world owns our own struggle for freedom because each one of us has our own ideas of what freedom means to us. Our natural rights are obviously universal, meaning that God created all of us with the same rights, no matter where our mothers were when we entered the world. And God instilled in all of us a continuous yearning to be free. We have enshrined many of these rights in our Constitution, and that has allowed people in this country to pursue happiness and build prosperity never before seen anywhere on the planet. And that happened here because people here were free to be free, even if limits on that freedom and expansive, unprecedented freedom were applied by the government. What freedom means is unique to each of us because we each exercise our natural rights in our own way. And that is the meaning of freedom. It cannot be imposed by force. It cannot be created by the government. It cannot be granted by the government. Frederick von Hayek once said that freedom granted only when it is known beforehand that its effects will be beneficial is not freedom at all. So here is the lesson. True peace and order emerge from the interaction of free people in an environment where natural rights are honored and respected. A peace that is imposed through force is not a peace at all, and an order that is imposed through force is not conducive to stability, because a coerced people yearn for more freedom. The world is full of change, and so are we. Stability comes from freedom because a free people will be able to interact and engage with each other and live in a way that is mutually respectful of natural rights. The quest for peace must reject the initiation of force, and the struggle for freedom must reject subjugation. As we continue to follow the uprisings in the Mideast and around the world, we can be hopeful that unlike the failed experiments in Iraq and Afghanistan, unlike the enormous loss of life, liberty, and property of Americans and others that Secretary Rumsfeld brought about, these struggles may secure the blessings of freedom for a people who are ready to seize those blessings for themselves. But it will not be an easy task, because the struggle for freedom never is. And that's why we defend it here every night of the week. From New York, defending freedom every